I love organizing things, and who doesn't? Biologists love organization because this makes it easier to classify organisms, or else it would be chaos. So, biologists gave it a fancy name to stand out and called it taxonomy. There was a need to standardize the naming of organisms so that everyone around the world could recognize them by the same name. This is what we call nomenclature. But first, we need to know what we are naming. This step is called identification. For example, let's take this animal and its name is going to be zebra. I like zebras. Certain organizations are responsible for setting rules to assign a scientific name to each organism. The International Code for Botanical Nomenclature is responsible for plants, while the International Code for Zoological Nomenclature is responsible for animals. Since it is really impossible to study all of the 1.7 to 1.8 million and more living organisms just like that, we use classification, a technique in which organisms are grouped into certain convenient categories based on easily observable characters. Let's say I tell you about dogs. You immediately associate it to fluffy pooches with wagging tails and sharp canines, and yet absolutely adorable pets. However, if I say German Shepherd, well, it's this kind of dog. Dogs, mammals, wheat, rice. These are all convenient categories we use to study organisms, and the scientific term for these kind of categories is taxa. The singular is taxon. Before we go forward, let us take a moment to appreciate the father of taxonomy, Carolus Linnaeus. Carolus Linnaeus has many books to his name, two of them being Systema Naturae, from which we got the word systematics. Systematics stands for the classification which takes into account evolutionary relationships between organisms. The second is Species Plantarum, which was the starting point of plant nomenclature as we know today. Now, back to the point. Taxonomic categories. Classification is not a single-step process, but involves a hierarchy of steps in which each step represents a rank or category. This is called the taxonomic hierarchy, and each category is the taxon. The higher we go up in this hierarchy, we see fewer and fewer similarities. So, let's begin with species. Species is the taxon with the highest number of similarities. Each species is different from the other based on some morphological differences. The members of a species can breed with each other to produce offsprings that can produce further offsprings, and so on. Let's consider Mangifera indica, Solanum tuberosum, and Panthera leo. Indica, tuberosum, and leo are all specific epithets which represent a species, whereas Mangifera, Solanum, and Panthera represent the second taxon, which is called genus, a group of related species. The genus is always written with the first letter being capital. When the scientific name is typed, it is formatted in italics, else if it is handwritten, it's underlined separately to indicate its Latin origin. Sometimes the author's name may appear after the specific epithet, like in Mangifera indica Linn, which means that it was first discovered by Linnaeus. Thank you, Linnaeus, for the binomial nomenclature. Now, moving on to family, which is a group of related genera. In plants, it is usually based on vegetative and reproductive features. For example, the Solanaceae family, which consists of three genera, Solanum, Petunia, and Datura. If we talk about animals, the Felidae, which is the cat family, has many genera under it, like Panthera and Felis, among others. Order is the assemblage of families and even fewer similar characters. In plants, we have the Polymoniales order, which is based on floral characteristics and has the families Convolvuluaceae and Solanaceae under it. In animals, we have the order of Carnivora, which groups the Felidae and the Canidae families under it. Now we move on to class, which contains related orders. For example, in the animal kingdom, we have a class called Mammalia, which groups the orders Primata and Carnivora under it. There are many more orders, but I won't go into much detail. The next on the list is phylum, which is an assemblage of several classes. Phylums are usually based on the presence of notochord, so it may be included in phylum Chordata if it has, or in non-Chordata if it doesn't, which we will hopefully see in another video. Last but not the least is kingdom, which is the highest taxonomic category, which has two kingdoms, plants and animals. Phew. In case you ever feel like you're forgetting this sequence, use this mnemonic. King Philip came over for good soup. Now, let's take a look at the entire classification of human beings, shall we?